Does the general public realize that in the bombing raids of Germany, 26 million German civilians died in those bombing raids? The cities were leveled, and when the war was over, Eisenhower himself ordered the German soldiers put in the concentration camps and other local holding areas, cut them off with no food and water, and let the tens of thousands of them die.
This was the book, the Canadian book, Other Losses, that was severely debunked even in the tabloid press here, which turned my attention to that. I thought, gee, this must be something very important if they are so angry about the book.
Right. That's usually the case.
This also plays very well with the population policies, because bombing Germany gives an excuse to everybody, including the pilots and the bombing crews that would drop the bombs on the cities, to eliminate all these people. Dresden was target bombed and leveled. Tokyo was carpet bombed. Tokyo was carpet bombed with incendiary devices, and in less than a week, actually, I think in 2-3 nights in Tokyo there were as many casualties as in the Hiroshima and Nagasaki nuclear bombings. By these carpet bombings of whole city neighborhoods. First they would bomb the periphery of the neighborhood to prevent anybody from escaping, and then they slowly, drinking their coffee up there, unobstructed by any fighter aviation, they would level and burn the whole city. Anyway, to come back to the mind control experiments in Germany.
Right. As merely may wish to make a point here that in spite of the appearances of being terrible mortal enemies, there was covert cooperation going on, and one of the other areas of this covert cooperation was in the fact in the period of 1933 to approximately 42, they were smuggling out Jewish scientists who were working on mind control and other projects, and this was essentially allowed by Germany.
Even Einstein was smuggled out.
He was smuggled out. He did not leave because he was thrown out. This is a total fiction. He left in 1930, before the rise to power of Hitler with his full power, because the National Socialist Party considered him an asset, wanted him to leave, and to stay, and his friends told him, you better get out while you can, because after the war, or let us say the build-up to full power of the Nazis comes into place, you're not going to be able to get out. And he was a pacifist. He knew there was going to be war eventually, so he moved to the U.S., to Caltech, taught there for 3 years, and was invited to join the Institute of Advanced Study at Princeton, which he did in 1933, and remained there till his death in 1955. But there were many others smuggled out. They did a lot of work on mind control in Nazi Germany during the war, much of it centering around indoctrination of the SS troops, involving supersonic sound impingement on the occipitals of the brain, and it was quite successful.
Ultrasonic.
Ultrasonic, correct. The Japanese worked on RF techniques, and that has been swept under the rug and was never admitted to by the U.S. government. The stories of the Buck Rogers screws that went into Germany are fairly well known. What is not well known is that some 26 railroad car loads full of patents and other technical data were seized by the British and the Americans and the French when the war was over. And these were technical processes which we did not have and we wanted, and that was one of the aspects of the war.
Actually, I heard stories in Renato Vesco's book, Intercept But Don't Shoot, that there were miles of boxcars. There were 9 kilometers from one underground huge city, and 16 kilometers from another city. Miles of boxcars loaded with designs, with blueprints, with machinery, with sophisticated equipment, and so on.
Include the equipment and the machinery and working models of devices, yes, it would be a lot more than 26 boxcars for sure. But this whole business of interchange and cooperation took place covertly. The war ended. And, of course, certain of the Nazi hierarchy, namely SS Chief Gehlen, who was the security chief for Hitler, in a deal worked out by Roosevelt before he died, all of this group of intelligence people was transferred to the United States and formed later the backbone of the CIA. The deal was in order to obtain and retain the surveillance crews and groups which were already in Russia in place. The U.S. agreed to have these people be transferred to the U.S. so we would have the capability, and these people would be left alone. This was the price. They said, we will do what you want and cooperate with you, but you leave us alone.
At the same time, Russia captured another portion of the SS officers, and they had them transfer the SS spies in the United States to the Russian interests. So basically, the very same things have been going on both sides of the curtain, which was a Mickey Mouse curtain to start with.
All right, now let us get back to the technical side of this.
And the Phoenix Project.
Right, these people, the scientists from Germany, were held in hiding, so to speak, while the war was on, and when the war was over and 47 rolled around, they went to work for a U.S. national laboratory called Brookhaven National Laboratories at Brookhaven, Long Island. And their first and primary project there for many years was mind control. They worked on this for some 20 years, up until about 1968. Now, since Brookhaven is a national laboratory funded by tax money, they must, under law, report what they're doing in all departments and all projects once a month. Who's on them, what they're doing, what they're accomplishing, what they're not accomplishing, and whether they're going to cancel a project, whatever, the whole 9 yards of reporting of what the activities of that laboratory is, or any national laboratory in the U.S. that's receiving tax monies. So this went on for about 20 years. In about 1968, somebody started reading these reports in Congress.
Finally.
Finally, after 20 years. And they looked at this stuff and they said, mind control? And they're getting results. They might use this stuff on us. Cancel the project. The project was canceled, and the orders also came down that these scientists who were working on the project will be moved out of Brookhaven, and they were. So they started looking for a new home. And since they were already at Brookhaven, which is more than halfway to the eastern tip of Long Island, it didn't take them too long in looking around to find that Montauk had a military base called Fort Hero, and the Army there was quite interested in what they were doing. They said, why don't you come here and work with us? We'll give you a haven and you can continue your work. So they did.
So from Brookhaven, they moved to Long Island Haven.
If you want to call it that. A Long Island haven at Montauk in the underground of Fort Hero. Now, Fort Hero was actually a very large installation, and it was right around a state park, which was built sometime in the period, I think, prior to World War II.
How many submarines could dock in these underground pens simultaneously?
From what I understand, only 2. It was not an extensive Navy operation. It was basically Army. And it was, of course, a defense point during World War I and World War II with the old railroad carriage guns and all of the heavy ammo and such. All of this was abandoned and torn down after World War II. And the radar came in with several systems, and then the Air Force moved in and took over some buildings and did continuing radar work, experimental, and built the SAGE system, and then that was eventually scrapped in '69. Now, it was interesting to note that the people from Brookhaven, the Jewish scientists, and those related to them and working with them, moved out to Montauk about '68, and the base was then formally abandoned by the military in '69. And it became noted on the GAO, General Accounting Office records, that it was an abandoned surplus base. Well, I can assure you these guys didn't move out. It was the ideal cover for them, and they continued to work.
Well, I've noticed that what they do is they keep the essential people, and then they rotate the non-essential military personnel in order to keep the secrecy. They have one group coming and digging the base, another group coming and doing the concrete, a third one does the interior fittings and decoration, a fourth one does the initial part of the research, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, and that's how, through this time-wise compartmentalization, the track is lost of what goes on down there.
Right. And of course, they also had built years before, when I don't know, their own electrical power plant. They had 4 generators of a half a megawatt each in a separate building, and they did for years supply the power, but when they built the later follow-on Phoenix project, they had so much trouble with those generators, they had to stop using them and go to local power, which is Long Island Lighting Company, usually called Lilco, and take power from their lines. But this is much later. Now, the project continued from '69 onward on an abandoned military base, but certain other things also took place in that period which were moved out there also, because this was called the Phoenix Project from about 47 on and became for many, many projects.
Umbrella.
A real umbrella.